Hello and welcome to Lord of the Board. My name is Sam Smith and today we are going to be doing an overview and strategy guide for Loki in the brand new Marvel Villainous set, Mischief and Malice. Now, Loki is the god of mischief. Therefore, during gameplay, what he has to do in order to win the game is gain these mischief tokens. Now, when you gain them on an unspent side, which will show this green side up. And throughout the game, you're going to be using that mischief that you gain, essentially spending it. It's going to go to the other side of the board and be considered a spent mischief token. Now, once you have gained 10 mischief tokens and spent 10 mischief tokens, you will have won the game as Loki. Now, one of the special aspects about Loki is that he actually has a unique card type called Multiverse cards. These cards can be played to opponents' domains and they sit below their domain, kind of like one of their own allies. Now, these cards just coexist with the player's domain and they give an ability that that player can utilize, but when utilized, it will often give Loki mischief. And so it is a very fun balance of wanting to use these powerful effects, but not wanting Loki to get too powerful. Now, I'm not going to go super in detail about rules in this video. If you're wanting to know exactly how multiverse cards work and some of the other special mechanics within Loki's deck, you've always got this handy guide here. However, I will give some notable things about multiverse cards. You cannot play them to Loki's domain, you have to play them to an opponent's domain. And another aspect is that there can only be one in an opponent's domain at any given time. Now today we are going to be looking at Loki's cards, the 4 locations in his domain, and then at the end of the video I am going to give you 3 tips and strategies to help you play Loki better. But without further ado, let's go ahead and begin the guide. VERITY WILLIS is a 2 power cost, 1 strength ally card that has the effect while VERITY WILLIS is in play, Loki's hand size is 5 cards. However, all cards drawn from the villain deck are now shown to other players before being put into your hand. Now, getting that extra card is extremely good. However, showing off your cards can work against you because they are so heavily influenced by what your opponent's boards look like and what they have on their boards. So what I like to do is I like to play VERITY WILLIS at a location in my domain that already has a hero, so that just in case I have to get rid of her and go back down to drawing 4 cards but not letting my opponent see what's going on, I have an out for her in order to vanquish that hero and be removed from play. And then we've got LORELEI, who is a 2 power cost, 2 strength ally. Now, LORELEI is a pretty good utility ally. Her effect is heroes at LORELEI's location have their strength reduced by 2. Now, while this is a powerful ability, this is definitely much more situational, and I would only use this if I desperately need to remove a hero from my realm by force. But for the most part, I'd probably just let this card cycle through my deck unless I had an immediate use for it. LEAH, Loki's best friend, is a 3 power cost, 2 strength ally that says that on your turn, you may perform 1 additional action from the location LEAH, Loki's BFF, is currently at. Now, I really like this card because getting that extra action is super important. And I know that it may be obvious, but definitely don't use her for any vanquish actions because you want the ally to exist in your domain as long as possible. My favorite place to place her is going to be Bifrost because you have the option to fate your opponent, discard cards, or gain power depending on what phase of the game you're at or what your opponent is doing. Frost Giants are a 3 power cost, 4 strength ally, and their card's ability is that when performing a vanquish action, Frost Giants may be used to defeat a character at their location or at an adjacent one. And the reason why I keep finding myself needing these in my domain is because there are so many good actions on the top side of my board. Now, my preference is to place these either at Jotunheim or Bifrost, with a bigger preference on Jotunheim just because that's adjacent to both locations that have a discard action on the top of each. Thor, the brother of Loki, is a 4 power cost 5 strength ally that says that when performing a vanquish action, you may move Thor, brother of Loki, to the location of that action. Thor, brother of Loki, is returned to your hand after being used to defeat an event. Now, I find this card very, very helpful in only certain circumstances. If you are playing with events, obviously this card is best if you're using it with an event because that is both economic and very helpful getting through to your goal or getting a reward from an important event. But if this is a game where you're not playing with events, I could totally see just discarding this and saving that power cost. However, it can be very helpful to have Thor around if you're getting swarmed with a ton of heroes by your opponents. Now, while Loki seems to have plenty of allies, he does not have as many items at his disposal. So we're going to be talking about the 2 items in Loki's deck, starting with the Scepter of Asgard. Now, this is a 1 power cost item card that allows you to attach it to an ally, and that ally will gain +2 strength. And honestly, I don't really find myself using this that much, but some of my favorite allies to attach it to are going to have to be the Frost Giants or Thor, brother of Loki, just because Thor, brother of Loki, could probably take down an event alone without giving rewards to any other players with this attached onto him. And I also like to give them to the Frost Giants because they have such a nice range of attack within your domain. And then we've got the 6 power cost Destroyer card, and this is a 4 strength item card that says you may relocate the Destroyer to any player's domain as a hero fate card with the Protector ability. When this card is defeated, Loki will gain 3 mischief. This is an awesome card, but it does cost a lot of power. But this card could be best when played against opponents that need to vanquish certain cards, like say Killmonger, because this will really slow an opponent like that down, having to focus in on the Destroyer. This would not really affect MODOK, for example, because MODOK does not really need to vanquish any heroes. And now we're going to be looking at the effect cards in Loki's deck, starting with Games Within Games. This is a 0 cost effect card that says spend 2 mischief. You may relocate any multiverse card to either a new domain, to a new location in the same domain, or remove it from play to your discard pile. Now, this is one of the major reasons why you're going to need to get those multiverse cards out really quickly, because if the multiverse cards are not giving you mischief themselves, this is a good way to capitalize on them and still get mischief out of those cards. But you cannot use this if you do not have a multiverse card out on the board. The other reason why this is such a good utility card is that if you see that an opponent is benefiting too much from having a multiverse card in their domain, this is going to be one of the only ways that you can actually remove that multiverse card from their domain. However, keep in mind that you've got 4 copies of this in your deck, so if it's not immediately helpful or applicable, go ahead and discard it. And then we've got Just Trust Me, which actually has a variable power cost. The card says to pay 2 power to gain 1 mischief, or you can spend 1 mischief to gain 2 power. So this will be really good at gaining mischief and spending mischief, and you've got 4 of these in the deck. This is one of my favorite cards because it just feels so good being able to have one of those 2 options and capitalizing on whichever one is going to help you in your game. Obviously, in the earlier game, you're going to be spending the power to gain those mischief tokens, and then you'll see them come back through the deck as you've gone through the whole deck. You'll be able to start spending those mischief tokens, and it feels like a really, really good investment. And last effect we've got is the 3 power cost Power of a God. Now this says that you can spend a number of mischief tokens equal to the strength of any hero in any domain. Remove that hero and any equal or lesser strength ally in that same domain. Now this can be such a powerful card that can lead to amazing power plays. Being able to see a high strength hero in an opponent's domain and being able to remove them in this way is one of the most satisfying feelings when playing Loki. However, this is definitely going to be a little bit tougher to pull off because you're going to need to have gained mischief that isn't spent yet in order to make this work. And now we're going to be talking about Loki's specialty cards. Now we're going to start with the most brilliant jest, which is a 2 power cost specialty card that says pay 1 mischief to activate this card, and you'll place -1 strength tokens equal to the strength on a hero in any domain. And I'm kind of torn by this card because on one end it's extremely cheap, only 2 power, but on the other end I really haven't found much of a good use for this card because oftentimes the higher strength is going to be better for cards like Power of a God. If you're getting faded a ton and you just cannot deal with it, this could be a really helpful specialty card, but I just don't think it's as good or as cool as the next 2 specialty cards that we're going to talk about. So then we've got the 3 power cost Who's the Tricky One specialty card. This says pay power equal to the number of multiverse cards in play and then gain that much mischief. Now this is a great early game engine for gaining mischief. I can see how later in the game you might not even need to play this card because you're already set in how much mischief you have, but if you're getting this card at any point earlier in the game and you just need more, this is a must play. My favorite specialty card, mostly because it does something that I've always dreamed of having in a villainous game, and that is the 4 power cost, the 10 Realms specialty card. Now this one has a load of text, so we're going to go through it. It says, at the start of your turn, you may spend 3 mischief, move Loki to the same location as a multiverse character. You may use that location's actions. Remain there until your next turn. Other villains may not move to your current location. Return to any location in your own domain on your next turn. Essentially, this gives Loki the power to actually infiltrate another player's domain, stopping them from using that location on their turn. And it is one of the most satisfying things that you can do in this game, period. Trust me. However, setting this up can be a little bit difficult. This card costs 4 power and you need that 3 mischief to spend. But the reward is so worth it having 3 mischief spent. This works in really good conjunction with Who's the Tricky One, as you're going to be able to gain the mischief that way, and then you could spend it this way with the 10 realms. Now I'm not going to be talking about the multiverse cards just yet because I'm going to save those for the strategy portion of this guide. So I am going to move on to the 4 locations in Loki's domain, starting with Odin's Throne. Now Odin's Throne has a play a card action, a gain 3 power action, an activate action, and a relocate action. Now this location is really good earlier in the game when that 3 power is not covered by an opponent's hero card. Overall, I find myself using this location less and less throughout the game. However, it will always be the go-to space for your activate action, as there is none other in your domain. And then we've got the Bifrost. Now this has a discard action, a play a card action, gain 2 power action, as well as a fate action. And this one is going to be a very useful location for Loki because it's got the 3 big needs as Loki, which is discarding cards, gaining power, as well as fating your opponents. This is definitely a location that you're going to want to keep clear from heroes. And then we've got Jotunheim. This has 2 play a card actions, a fate action, as well as a vanquish action. Now this one's definitely more of a utility card. It's one that you're going to be able to use after you've gotten a lot of power at other places because you can't gain power and play a card here. But this is the only spot that you can play 2 cards and really combo. So it kind of has a niche use. And then lastly, we've got Sanctum Sanctorum. This has a vanquish action, a discard action, a play a card action, and a gain 2 power action. And this is another really useful location because it's got that discard, the gain 2 power as well. This is one that you're going to want to keep clear, especially if Bifrost is already covered, because then this is the only other place that you can be discarding, cycling through your deck, and getting to the cards that are most important to you. All in all, Loki's realm is extremely well built and balanced, and pretty much every location will become useful in different circumstances. Now my first strategy tip is going to be going over the multiverse cards and explaining exactly where they should be played based on who your opponents are. Mostly just to try to give you an idea of how these multiverse cards work in relation to your opponents. Now each of these multiverse cards is another variant of Loki himself, and all of them are going to be able to give your opponent a special ability, but whenever they're using that special ability or decide to use the special ability, you will gain some mischief. So let's talk about Lady Loki first. This is a 1 power cost multiverse card that says that when the villain whose domain Lady Loki is played to fills up their hand, they may take cards from their discard pile and or their villain deck. Loki gains +1 mischief for each card taken from the discard pile. Now I love this card because it's really good to play against opponents that need specific cards, especially ones that churn through their deck by discarding cards throughout. So my favorite target for this has got to be MODOK. MODOK's playstyle benefits so much from using this ability, and it will be a constant temptation for the MODOK player in order to not use this. And then we've got the 2 power cost Kid Loki multiverse card, which says that if a villain whose domain Kid Loki is played to moves to Kid Loki's location, they will gain 4 power, and Loki gains +1 power and +2 mischief. Now my best advice for this is to go through all of the Marvel guides that I've released and check what locations are best for that particular villain. Place Kid Loki at that location in your opponent's domain because they will likely want to go there. Viking Loki is a 3 power cost multiverse card. It says that if the villain whose domain Viking Loki is played to moves to Viking Loki's location, all allies they control gain +1 strength. One of Loki's allies gains +1 strength, and Loki gains +2 mischief. Now I try to give this to an opponent that does not benefit from having powerful allies, so definitely do not play this in Taskmaster's realm, and also avoid playing this in Madame Mask's realm. And on which location to play it, same as Kid Loki, check my other Marvel Villainous guides, look at what their best locations are, and play it at one of those locations. And then we've got the 3 power cost King Loki multiverse card that says while King Loki is in a villain's domain, allies removed due to a vanquish action are returned to that villain's hand. Loki gains +1 mischief per ally used in the vanquish action. This is an extremely good multiverse card because your opponent has no way out of giving you mischief if they're going to be vanquishing heroes. So the best villains to give King Loki to are going to be Killmonger, Hela, or Madame Mask. And then we've got the coolest one of the bunch, the 4 power cost Sorcerer Supreme Loki. This says that when taking a fate action, the villain whose domain Sorcerer Supreme Loki is played to draws 3 fate cards, plays 1, and discards the others. Loki gains +1 mischief each time that villain takes a fate action. And the reason why this is so great is because it will be used by any villain you give it to. Obviously, you're going to be watching out on who is doing better and who is doing worse, but for the most part, this can be played to any opponent, and it will always be bringing in you mischief whenever they're going to be fading, or they're just going to stop fading, which is nice in its own way. Now my second tip kind of corresponds with the first, talking about those multiverse cards and giving you an idea on where to place them. The other thing is that you really got to sell these abilities to your opponents. Convince them that they need specific cards in their discard pile, or tell them that this deal is really good for both of you. You don't have a lot of mischief right now. It's not going to be giving you as much of a benefit as them to gain 4 power. Really build up how good these multiverse cards are when your opponent uses them. You'll see that every time I play Loki, this is exactly what I do. So remember to be doing that table talk because it is definitely going to be essential when playing Loki. And my last tip is going to be fading often is very, very important as Loki, because you're going to need those hero fate cards out on the board so that when you're able to use Power of a God, you can close the game really quickly. Some of the best targets are going to be the Hulk Avenger, because then when vanquished, you can still vanquish them again for 6 strength. So that could be potentially 12 mischief gained if you were able to use 2 Power of the Gods. There is so much opportunity in the sheer amount of hero fate cards, so fading often is essential. So that is it for Loki. It is such a fun game to play as him, and I really hope that this helps you to really think about Loki more strategically in your next game as him. Loki is one of my favorite characters in Marvel Villainous, period. Such a blast to play, such fun table talk, and feeling really mischievous. But that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. With that, let's go ahead and drop the beat.